if you're at a studio, it's a very convenient group of people to get that team to be mad at is the publisher. It's ultimately not a great idea because you got to work with these people, but it is super easy and it's super effective. So I would say that even within the team itself, there's a certain amount of this is the publisher's fault, even when it's not.
Hello, and welcome back to the Game Developer Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Editor Brian Francis. We at Game Developer pride ourselves on sharing news and insights for the game development community. It's a niche field, but we do have some strong competition. Let me just check the list here. GI.biz, GamesBeat, former BioWare executive producer Mark Darrah? Yep. For the last 2 years, Mark has been producing a YouTube channel called Mark Darrah on Games, where he unloads his thoughts about the game industry and shares insights from his time at BioWare. It's a great mix of lessons for people making games and some myth-busting for people who love playing them. His channel got a lot of extra traffic recently when he published a video called What Really Happened on Anthem, referring to BioWare's ill-fated 2019 online action RPG that had really awesome flying mechanics but struggled with almost everything else. We've seen plenty of developers start YouTube channels or blogs to try and share the realities of game development with players, but we haven't seen many be so transparent about the games they worked on, especially when those games underperformed with critics and players. Today, we're talking to Mark about his channel, his career, and how he thinks the game industry can improve. And Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so exciting to have you here. Like, I do want to get into the nitty gritty of what I brought you on to talk about, your YouTube channel, your career, talking to developers, but also, I've been playing BioWare games since I was a teenager. And unfortunately, I know you joined BioWare in 1997. And unfortunately, in 1997, I was getting my first Game Boy Pocket. So I haven't gotten to play some of the older titles in your backlog. But, it's just really awesome to speak with people who've been around in the industry for a long time, who've learned a lot, who can still share a lot, and who worked on things that I love and are just, sort of just people, there's no gods, no celebrities in this business, even though sometimes people act like it.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel that the industry is in love with trying to elevate individual devs into positions of over authority. And, for the most part, this is an industry where things are developed by teams, not by individuals.
Yeah. And this is tricky because sometimes on a team, a person can either sort of naturally fit into the role of being, the public face of the team. People don't want to be the public face, being in the spotlight, takes a lot of time. So I don't think it always happens for the worst reasons, right? Sometimes it happens. And then I think it's just the responsibility of people who find themselves in that position to not, act like they're, Steve Tyler from Aerosmith, even Steve Tyler.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. I think that I don't think you want your entire team representing your game because most of the people on the team, they have no media training and they don't want to be doing that.
Yeah.
So yes, you do want to elevate a couple of voices, but it is the responsibility of those voices, I think, to keep people aware of the fact that this is a team effort and to try to keep all of the light off of themselves. I mean, I think that you can do it too much because I think it's also the responsibility of the people in the spotlight to act as a shield from some of the blame and hostility that can come from public discourse as well. But I think that it can go to your head, I guess, it would be the best way to say it.
Yeah, I've seen some instances recently of some developer leaders blaming members of their team for things that appeared in their game and sort of not going nope, I'm the final, I'm the CEO, the buck stops with me or whatever. I've seen that, and I think I've just been more surprised than anything because I'm the number one PR move there is to just not even acknowledge it, right? But instead you're out here blaming, not just blaming someone, but blaming the company they worked for before and saying, oh, it's because they worked on Call of Duty. That's why we have this $80 bundle in Splitgate 2. Now I'm naming names, which is getting spicy, but it's frustrating to see that happen.
It absolutely is. I do think that we've lost the art of not saying anything in corporate communications to some degree. We've gotten into a weird world where we are talking when we shouldn't and not talking when we should, and the trick is to find that balance, and we seem to have forgotten how to do that.
Yeah. And speaking of either talking when we should or not talking when we shouldn't, I'm not sure which one we're doing right now, but you have a YouTube channel. It's called Mark Darrah on Games. You've been doing it for a couple years now. And I actually, I sort of joked earlier in my recording that, oh, wait, hang on, you're competition for us. We're supposed to be the ones telling people what game developers think about game developer, but now he's going to the audience himself. So yeah, just kind of like, what made you want to do a YouTube channel after being done with BioWare, and like how's it been going?
It's been going pretty well. I mean, it's certainly not a full-time career for me. It makes a little bit of money, but I reach a relatively small audience. I think my audience is people in higher level positions. All my experiences in AAA, and all my recent experience is leading relatively large teams. Even as a lead programmer, I was leading relatively large teams. So a lot of it tends to be more leadership focused, vision focused, focused more on the things that are relevant to larger groups of people. For me, I think the big impetus, the big motivation for the channel is to say, we can make this industry better by learning from the lessons that other people have learned before us. And to be frank, the place that probably needs the most getting better is the part of the industry where there are very large teams with a lot of management involved.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes those problems, I'm in the position right now where I'm talking to some folks about, oh, what problems does the industry need to solve with things? And we're sort of setting some of the answers and getting back are like, oh, we need to be doing this kind of design better, iterating better, testing better, and I think there's, the unspoken, the thing sometimes people almost seem to be trying to avoid is saying, like, sometimes the problem is how people work together, but how people work together in large groups is a problem so large that, like, there are legitimately good courses on project management, product management. A friend of mine was telling us that they took a course on project management, and there was a day called, like, how to tell if a meeting should be an email. And I was like, we were all like, oh my God, that means it was actually made by project managers,
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, because the games industry is still pretty young and pretty immature, a lot of the lessons in this area are still kind of being learned over and over again on each individual project or studio.
Yeah.
Because we're starting to see some courses around, like, we're starting to see more maturity, more education around video game programming, video game design, video game art, and we're just in the nascent part but management and leadership is a discipline as well.
Yeah.
How can we make that better as well? And unfortunately, I think a common trap I see teams fall into is the systems that work for a team of 20 or even a team of 100 don't work at a team of 600.
Yeah.
And there can be an immense amount of smugness or arrogance that comes from that team of 20 watching that team of 400 flounder beside them. And then when they find themselves in that situation, they didn't take the opportunity to learn the lessons of that bigger team as it struggled, and then they have to basically learn the lessons again themselves.
Yeah, just very like, oh no, that could never happen to me, and then just like an invisible reaper, just like standing over them with a scythe. I've
been guilty of that, like, being on the early parts of a project, watching the other teams like mess up in what seemed to be very obvious ways, and then being like, well, we'll never do that, and then maybe not necessarily driven into the same hole, but then driven into an equally obvious hole 3 feet to the left.
Yeah, it's like the Roadrunner, or excuse me, the Wile E. Coyote painted not one, but two holes on the wall. And instead of running through it, the first Roadrunner ran through it. And you're like, oh, come on, it's obvious. Like, just don't, if the wall is actually going to work, don't run into the wall. And then suddenly you're the Roadrunner into the wall. And, we all just love old Looney Tunes cartoons, I guess. So that's where that metaphor ends.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you share an example of that kind of in a way that, like, I think a challenge when talking about these problems is when, you're talking about like studios that have a big spotlight on them, like BioWare, is that you can sort of get lost in the sauce on what people think broadly about the studio. But like, I'm curious if you can share an example of when you saw another team run into a problem and you're like, well, that can't happen to me. And then you ran into that problem. Like, are there any concrete examples you can share?
Um, are there? I think that probably the one that is that I've experienced the most times is about people understanding the vision of the game.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a team of 20 people, 30 people, 50 people, um, not only is it very easy to talk to a group that small and get everyone on board, because it's very easy to have a two-way conversation with a group
Yeah.
that small, and really kind of everyone is kind of living in the same bathtub of vision. But also, I think what can also happen is that it's actually very easy when when you're that small to uh, to kind of group think yourself into thinking you understand your vision better than you do.
Yeah.
Whereas when you are 500 people, you can fail in kind of two ways. Either you are just simply failing to communicate your vision because you don't really have a proper way to present it. You were just kind of used to hanging out and jamming about your vision, and you can't do that with 500 people. It just simply does not work. Or what you find is you do have a way to communicate it, but what you thought was a really solid vision with 20 people who all were kind of thinking the same way completely explodes in contact with 500 people, because
Yeah.
suddenly the 200 people that are now on your project who aren't completely immersed in 80s in 80s cartoons are like, I don't know what you're talking about when you say He-Man. I don't know
Yeah.
what you mean when you're talking about when you're talking about the Smurfs. This doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And then you realize as you try to explain it to them that actually doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
You thought it made sense, but it only made sense because you all were speaking a very narrow language.
Yeah.
And as a result, like, this is the danger of any kind of overly homogenous team, is if you are aimed in the right direction and everything's perfect, then a very homogenous team can be very efficient at moving in that direction. But it can be very difficult to integrate new people unless they also are exactly like that existing group
Yeah.
of people. So when you grow, it can be hard to onboard those new people. But the
Yeah.
other problem is if you're not aimed at the right place, if it turns out that your Smurf analogy literally makes no sense, you're just going to be driving all merrily thinking you're going in the right direction. You're driving in, you left the road 45 minutes ago and nobody's there to say you did, because you all think and act in the same way.
Yeah, that's kind of to use the cartoon metaphor, you can sort of talk a big picture about, like, I don't know, bright, colorful, like merchandisable, like when you're doing like a big studio presentation or something. Like, imagine everything's like a toy and every character has their own like identity you could sell or whatever. But it's funny because even then in the thing you're referencing in cartoons, everyone of a different age is actually thinking of those very words in different ways. Because if you jump ahead to my childhood, that means a different thing for the Batman the animated series years. Jump even further to the Gen Z, and Steven Universe is a whole different beast. Like,
Right.
you can trick yourself into thinking,
Right.
like,
He-Man and Steven Universe bear very little. Like 80s He-Man and Steven Universe have basically nothing in common with each other,
Yeah.
other than the medium. They are technically both kids' cartoons.
yeah. And you could intellectually, like, say, someone who, like, the two people from each role could actually, like, agree on that and then still, like, bang into each other while trying to, like, make, like, this cool hypothetical cartoon game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's definitely a place that's a trap I've fallen into a couple of times, because you think you've got it nailed down, but you don't, as it turns out.
Yeah, and that must be real frustrating to, like, have seen it and be like, no, we sort of talked about it a second ago, right? To go, I'm better than that, and then not, especially, I think with vision, right? Vision's especially something that, like, can have a lot of emotional impact too. Like, you can, if you and another team are, like, struggling to solve a technical problem, you can at least go, like, well, technology's hard. But if it's a vision thing, in theory, this means a lot to people. This means a lot to you if you're the team leader. Like, you think you're sharing something, and whichever one of those three categories, you just described, like, boom, like, you just get, it hurts harder.
It can be incredibly frustrating to think you're communicating your vision clearly in a any 2-year old can understand what I'm saying, and then
Hmm.
get people coming back and literally, clearly not understanding it at all.
Yeah.
And it's like, and the reality is, so I mean, unfortunately, there are two possibilities in that case. Possibility one is you aren't being clear. You aren't communicating, and possibility two, something that often that I've experienced several times is people will act like they don't understand your vision when they actually simply don't agree with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like if you're pitching whatever, we need to make a cooking RPG, and you do have it well designed and you do have it well communicated. You will get some people that are like, I don't understand this because I'm so rooted in combat based RPGs that I just can't understand what you're saying. But you will get different people using almost exactly the same language saying, I don't understand a cooking RPG because they don't want to make a cooking RPG, because
Yeah.
they don't agree with making a cooking RPG. And so they will mask their disagreement with confusion. And unfortunately, you have to deal with those two people in very different ways, and it can be very difficult to figure out what's actually occurring.
And then even then, like with the second group, it's sort of easy to I can see a reason to like just villainize that person in your head, but then think about the fact that like, everyone's especially in 2025, like everyone wants to keep their jobs, everyone wants to do their
Yeah.
field. Everyone's used to some degree of mercenary work, like, oh, I don't really like this kind of game, but I'll work on it. And when is that actually a problem? When is that interfering? It's
And
like, well,
that's exactly it. Is there it reaches a point with the I don't want it, I don't agree with this, where it's like, yeah, that's okay, but you're going to do it. You're going to do it anyway.
yeah,
Like you don't. Everyone. It's. I think it's very important that everyone understands the vision, but it's not very. It's not as important that everyone agrees with the vision.
yeah,
You want as much agreement as you can get, sure, but at some point, it's like, yep, you just got to get on the bus or off the bus, and
yeah,
at some point, like that's going to be with certain people. It's like that's the that's the branch in the road. Is you've got to decide. I'm not gonna convince you, but it's what we're doing. So you got to decide. You've got to make a decision for yourself,
yeah,
and so that's why it's so important to be able to tell the difference, because with that person that doesn't understand, you really want them to understand, if at all possible. For the person that doesn't agree, that it would be nice, but you don't actually need everyone on your team to agree to your vision. You just need
yeah,
them to understand it.
yeah, yeah. It's we're all professionals here, right? Um,
Exactly.
Yeah, the in the video that most recently caught my eye on your channel, the what happened on Anthem video, an interesting another end of this dynamic popped out at me, which was I believe you described it, and I'm hoping I'm getting the individual's name right here. I believe you described it as like the original vision for Anthem that was coming together. I believe it was Casey Hudson whose habit of sharing the vision was like, there was the close group, who saw the first slides, and then there was the drip feeding of it around the studio that you talked about, and how in the smaller team days that like created excitement, but as the teams got bigger and when Casey left the project, that created like a new problem. There was like in groups and out groups. There was people who didn't have the whole picture who then could be argumentative, but they didn't need to be. Like the social dynamic, I think, and how and then the people you're relate to each other after you've shared it then enters the picture and becomes a huge challenge.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed a couple of times, like this situation with Casey, also some of the technical leadership that worked under me on Jade Empire had a similar problem. One thing that can happen is you can have a leader who does very nuanced, very clever things, like Casey did, where it's like, I am I have a vision. I'm keeping it tight. There's a group that are really inside the bubble on that, and then we're using this to generate like the excitement of, we're a small team. It's us against the world, and we're going to do this. And I'm going to use my knowledge to drip feed enough information outside of that bubble to keep everyone excited about what's going on and
Yeah.
understanding what's going on. And then that person, that lead, leaves, and then whoever moves into the same spot understands only the sort of macroscopic version of this. They understand that, oh, we run on secrecy, not understanding that it's kind of not exactly secrecy. It's something that is pretending to be secrecy. They are
Yeah.
sharing they're sharing everything they need to share and using and wearing like a cloak of this secrecy so that it feels more special.
Yeah.
And if you can't make that transition, you take something that is actually a positive and turn it into a negative because you
Yeah.
take something that is you're not really getting any with what Casey was doing. You're not getting any of the downsides of secrecy. You're
Yeah.
just getting the positives.
Yeah.
But if you adopt a truly secret thing where you have PowerPoints locked down with passwords, and you are only having 5 people in most of your meetings, and you're not sharing things with the team, and you're not sharing things with the broader studio, you're flipping it on its head. You're not actually getting as many of the positives of the secrecy, and you're getting all of the negatives.
Yeah. Is one of those positives the fact that in a process like this, because as we sort of talked about at the top, it's a group effort, everyone from QA all the way up to senior can inject something into it that you go, oh, I didn't know that was part of the vision. Do you feel like one of the ways that secretive process can work is that when you drip feed it out, you can give people more agency to create those like unexpected things, like because they only have so much information, they play in that space, and you go, oh, I didn't know that was going to pop out, but that totally fits. Like, do you feel like that's one of the advantages?
Yeah, I do think that's something that's an interesting thought, and I actually do think that's true. Is if you have people like if I think what you want to do with vision in a perfect world is it's a lighthouse in the dark, and you're not necessarily outlining the space between where you are and that lighthouse. You're just saying we need to get there, and I either don't necessarily. I'm acting like I don't care how you get there. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but I'm acting like I don't care. And by giving you that freedom to explore the space between those 2 points, maybe you'll find something awesome. Maybe you'll do something I would never have thought of to do, and and what we get is better. Like one problem you get if you lead as if all of your employees are additional hands without brains of their own, all you can do is execute to exactly what you want. And that can work. And there are examples of that degree of hyper micromanaged control working. But the problem with that is you are absolutely the bottleneck because every single decision is going through you.
Yeah.
And 2, the only source of creativity is you. You're squeezing everything else out of it, and everyone else is acting as if they are an automaton. And I suspect that some of the excitement over AI is coming from people who think in that way. It's like, well, I don't need that. I don't want that. I have no desire for additional sources of creativity. I want it to all be mine so I can use some generative AI thing to make the thing that I'm imagining. And it's like, I don't know that that's gonna work to the degree that you think it's going to.
Yeah. I have made it if I am not careful, I can turn every episode of this podcast into how is generative AI affected games? And so I am going to pull the ejector seat only because
steer away from that. Yeah, it's it's hard not to go down that road. I noticed that even when I was doing my Q&A 2 weeks ago, was like, it's like, oh, okay, it's once we have that conversation, it's like, oh no, I'm gonna just cut this short and stop talking about this because we can talk about this for half an hour easy.
Yeah, which loops us back to your YouTube channel and talking to people, which is you've now gotten to learn kind of what questions people think they need to ask. Say about generative AI. You've been this is one of many examples, I feel like, in talking about games where even among professionals, assumptions about how game development works can operate in such pure hypotheticals. Said the 2 guys talking in pure hypotheticals a little bit on this podcast. Hypocrisy have accepted. But it's hard because you need hypothetical, or I guess what have you learned about trying to make hypotheticals work? I guess that's a better question.
Because I do have to, just because of the I do end up talking in hypotheticals more than maybe I should or kind of want to, but there are limits to what I can talk about. I think you want your hypothetical whenever possible to be anchored on reality. Casey
Yeah.
used to say, don't worry about what could happen or worry about what will happen. And so I think if you are masking something real as a hypothetical, that's a what would or what did happen. It's just
Yeah.
maybe obfuscated to some degree.
Yeah.
If you're just talking about like what's the video game industry going to look like in 10 years, that's it's hard to talk about what will happen there. It's more just what could happen, because
Yeah.
that's so much in the fog of war that it's very difficult to talk about. So a lot of when I'm talking about the future on my channel, it's usually I'm usually talking, within the next 24 months, which I feel is within my ability to say. I feel I have some confidence, some anchoring in terms of what I see happening and what that will turn into. Once we go beyond 24 months, um, honestly, I don't think anybody actually knows. And right now, what I'm really feeling this year is, um, GTA 6 is going to come out next year. And I feel like until it does, I feel like I feel like it's such a moment. It's going to be such a moment in the video game industry, but it could be many different things.
Yeah.
And until it comes out, I feel like I actually kind of can't see beyond
Yeah.
it, for the industry, for the perception of the industry. Like, I mean, if GTA comes out and it does like it's okay, it's going to sell millions of copies. But if it
Yeah.
does less well than is being predicted, does that mean the video game industry falls over? No, but the video game industry is a very different thing. In a GTA comes out and sells, I don't know, let's say a catastrophe for GTA. It sells 15 million copies only. Um, that's a very different world than it comes out and it outsells GTA 5.
Yeah.
Like those are very different worlds based upon the performance of a single game, and a million different things in between those two extremes.
Yeah.
Um, and it's hard, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't. I'll be honest. And it's funny because it's such a big game. Imagine it came out and it was actually a catastrophe. Like it sold 2 million copies.
Yeah.
Like, I have no. Like, what does that mean? I don't know.
Yeah. I can't even wrap my head around that on the ground. Maybe on the grounds of like that feels just mathematically impossible. Like that just feels mathematically like
It would have to be like there would have to be like if you put it makes your PS5 explode or something.
or
Like it
or
would
it
have to
can't
be.
be downloaded. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't see. Yeah, you're right. I think there's just like just based on people who have already purchased it. It probably breaks 10 million units.
Yeah. 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 The uh as you've learned more about talking to the public about your job, I noticed looking at your channel, you were exploring a wide range of topics, and I was giggling a little bit at like sort of you trying to figure out the YouTube thumbnail, like
Nice.
the question mark with like big and sometimes your face, stock photos face with it. I can't act like I'm not above the algorithm. Like, look, I work for a website. We do catchy headlines. What have you learned about like what are people interested in versus what you think people need to be interested in? Like, what have you seen on that front?
Yeah, I think I have three audiences, which is I think part of the reason why me cracking the algorithm has been so difficult. So I have people who are in the industry and are either in jobs similar to mine or on paths towards jobs that are similar to mine. I think that's my core kind of, or people who are like hobbyist versions of that. Like maybe they aren't in the video game industry, but they kind of want to like think in that way.
Yeah.
That's my most consistent. They will show up for almost every single video. That it doesn't matter. My thumbnail doesn't matter. I could call it another thing I'm talking about, and that's like 800, 900,000 people that will kind of show
Unfortunately,
up.
I think another thing I'm talking about is now one of the YouTube optimized algorithms now.
Yeah.
Excuse me, you were saying.
Yeah, so that's one group. The second group are people that are watching, I guess, basically for BioWare T.
Yeah.
So they are so they'll show up for anything that's about Dragon Age, anything that's about Anthem, and then the third group is a group of people that I think are interested in video game development in general, more broadly than the sort of, they're in managerial or leadership positions and they're most curious about that. And they show up for things that hit correctly. So they're the most, I feel like they're the ones that are most susceptible to the, like, get my thumbnail right, get my title right, because because they're really making that decision. Whereas, the BioWare people, it's like, well, if it's about Anthem, they're going to show up because it's Anthem. But if it doesn't, so as long as it is clear that it's about Anthem, that's all the thumbnail needs to be clear about.
Yeah.
The problem that I find, and I'm sure this is, like you said, just the people complaining about YouTube problem, is I kind of, so, YouTube has A/B thumbnail testing finally and A/B title testing finally. But I actually think what really I feel like I want is I want different thumbnails for different audiences.
Yeah.
I want to be able to say, like, yeah, this is, like, let me title this as Lessons to Learn About Anthem for the people that are here to learn and make game development better. And let me label this whatever, like the real story behind, like, some clickbaity like drama thing for the people that I'm the more casual viewer that I'm dragging in. So I don't feel like I'm definitely not A tier thumbnails. I'm like C minus tier. And I haven't, like, I've spent more time on it, but I don't follow the advice of start with the title, start with the thumbnail, because for me it's the content matters more than anything. So it's like, I'm going to make this video.
Yeah.
And if 5 people watch it, hopefully they're the right 5 people and it's going to be helpful.
Yeah.
If I get 50,000 views, 100,000 views, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I guess at the end of the day, my ego doesn't like what I'm about to say, but at the end of the day, I guess this is not a channel for 100,000 people.
Yeah.
This is a channel for like 9,000 people.
Yeah.
That just, occasionally talks about something that can reach a larger audience.
Yeah. It's funny that you've sort of wandered backward into talking about, in theory, what my company's business model is, right? Not just with Game Developer, but with GDC, our sibling organization, and Informer's broad libraries. In theory, we're, trying to hit those 5 people. And in our case, maybe get, because we're a giant corporation, get certain amounts of money spent. But I admire anyone who can where they're really trying to say, like, if 5 people show up, if they're the right 5 people, I'm going to make sure they have the best time possible and learn the most. Like, I admire anyone, who can sort of aim for that in any form of media, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's only I guess if that's the reality, if this is a channel that's really only consistently for 1,000 people, there's probably a lifespan for the channel, because it's like, at some point, it's like, okay, well, I feel like I've said what I want to say, and I guess we're done talking about it. And so I guess we'll see if that's the reality or not.
Yeah, Sakurai kind of had that with his, like, game design insights channel, I think, which he just filmed the whole thing in like a week or something, not in a like crunch kind of pace, but he's like, oh, I've only got this much, I'm going to get a professional crew together, film this, and then upload it over months. So that was like a really interesting strategy to challenge that. And I think you've just got the opportunity to, like, learn and react and, like, see the industry things happening.
I mean, I believe that there's different ways that people tell stories and craft their stories.
Yeah.
And because of the way I craft my story, I do need the interaction with the audience to kind of get there. So I think the quality of video, not just like production quality, but like the quality of the information I'm delivering today is way better than what I was doing in 2021. Yeah. And that's because I'm basically, bouncing it off the audience. Yeah. So I couldn't do what he did. Like, I couldn't just sit down and brain dump myself in 2 weeks and call it a channel, because what I would deliver in that 2 weeks would be so half-baked compared to what I think the reality is.
Yeah. On the channel, something I can feel frustrated by, and I have experience with this because I used to be the person in charge of the GDC YouTube channel. How does it feel when you're trying to hit all these topics, and it sounds like you have some awareness that there's a degree of like either both BioWare fans desperate for anything and BioWare tea seekers who want the drama, checking out your channel and seeing things like the Anthem video hit a larger audience, and you're sort of like, that's not really what I don't want to like just like you're trying to hit the, excuse me, it sounds like that video is still hitting the goal you want, right? Like I really enjoyed watching that as a person who wants to know how games are made, and as a person who was curious about the game, but some of your audience is there for reasons that don't necessarily feel great. Like, how have you navigated that emotion, right? When those are the people who sometimes show up.
Yeah, I mean, so like the Anthem video is a good example because I feel like I've kind of reached a pretty good place with this one where it's like I know that I could become a whatever, like a react to BioWare news, and like I could
Yeah.
become a BioWare channel pretty easily.
Oh
And
God.
I think because of like my background, there's a hook there that would be particularly attractive.
Yeah. When you're ready for the full grift, when you're ready to go all in on
Yeah.
the grift.
Whereas so with Anthem I didn't feel that at all. But there have been
Yeah.
cases in the past when I've done videos about like, Dragon Age went gold. What does that mean? What's going to happen now? And like those videos also caught and grabbed on, and often because of the nature of where things were in the news cycle, also drew in more of the negative parts of that
Yeah.
group than the Anthem one did. Weirdly, and then I can tell you that yeah, I did feel like, oh, maybe I should do this, and it's like I didn't feel that at all with the Anthem one.
Yeah.
So that's good. I think it shows a sign that I'm like not about to flip to the dark side. But like my most successful video of all time is the just because you bought a game doesn't give you the right to be an asshole to the people who developed
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
video.
Yeah.
And that attracts so certainly I have no interest in attracting the audience that thing dragged out of the dregs of the internet. But I mean, you could see how it would work. You can see how that kind of rage inducing video can get a lot of views.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was running the GDC YouTube channel, one of the most popular videos was like 50 things I hate about your game pitch. And
Right.
great talk. I forget the gentleman who made it, but great talk. Great, like, yeah, pitching's hard. Here's some good ways to improve your pitch. Just, skip past all these failures and you're like on your way to a better pitch. Certainly plenty's probably changed since that was made in like 2016 or something. But then I saw the metrics on it spike after the Diablo Immortal was announced from Blizzard. After the Diablo Immortal announcement at BlizzCon. And I was like, what's going on here? And it was just people in the comments venting about Diablo Immortal. Video had nothing to do with Diablo Immortal. And this is like, made me pull my hair out about YouTube for ages, is like not only how well Rage does, but how well the people who engineer the algorithm is not a good phrase, but who engineer the platform. There we go. Seem pretty cool with Rage being such a powerful thing. And I, as someone who's had to navigate that relationship myself, I have personally been a little dispirited by that sometimes. It's why I like writing. When you get people who read, like even if they're jerks, like they get the Rage people get bored a little faster.
Well, and I feel like there are two, like, someone who watched one of my videos and hated it, but then wants to, tell me why I'm stupid, but in a thoughtful and well thought out way. I kind of like am like, okay,
Yeah.
I can kind of like, sure, great.
Yeah.
That's something that like we can have a conversation, or
Yeah.
even if we're not gonna have a conversation, like at least I can respect your opinion.
Yeah.
But you're just here because you needed to be somewhere to be angry. It's like I guess that the big media companies know this better than me, but my feeling is long term that driving engagement through anger, through negative emotions, is long term bad, like for your business.
Yeah.
That eventually people should should realize every time I go on this platform, it's just making me mad. Maybe I should just go on this platform less.
Yeah.
Like while I'm there, sure, I get it. It's like
Yeah.
I'm like absorbed in this curated, algorithmically driven rage bubble. But I would hope that people start to come out of that and go, "Oh, right, I just spent 8 hours on YouTube and it made me angry and made me feel bad."
Yeah.
And then and now maybe I need to spend less time on YouTube. Like I
Yeah.
feel like there's a second shoe to drop on using negative emotions to drive the algorithm that 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 I think is gonna come home and it's gonna hurt these companies. I feel like are gonna have to start changing the way they drive engagement.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. I think if nothing else, where the shoe drops faster is when you can only get people so mad about the same thing twice, and so you stretch further and further, especially when your financial goals are tied to it. And then whether or not you lose sight of the kayfabe of it, or you are genuinely just like that reckless a person, you make a mistake that like puts someone in harm's way, and then then there's rolling consequences from that. Obviously, Infowars in theory is one such media example of that.
Right.
But there's been so many mini versions of that over the years, and that's why I think it's so useful to like try and not like go see, ooh, the clicks go up, ooh, yes, everyone's watching. Like you, like even on our side, on the
It's
media side, we gotta like don't poke that dragon.
Yeah, it's hard. Like I mean, I can feel my motivations aren't the same. I'm not doing this as a job, and there are people that do this. This is they do this to make money, and they're just like one guy, and it's like, oh wait, when I made everyone mad at me, I made 5 times as much money. So like I get why you'd get sucked into that. But yeah, like Infowars is a great example. Maybe we can tighten the loop on this. Maybe they can, because it is like my if there are certain styles of content that feel like they add little to no value to the
Mm-hmm.
world, to the content that they're essentially kind of um, living off of. And I don't know. I realize that I'm about to steer us back down into the AI conversation, but I feel like I feel like there's got to be an end to the this channel exists to do very little other than to make people angry.
Yeah. The if I'll take a more positive step for a minute, maybe it's because it's been my own journey here that I've talked about before on this podcast with Liz England, is you do have people who wander through the rage sewer, if you will, come
Right.
across a channel like yours. You have that little moment, right, where they're like mad at you about like just because you bought a game doesn't tell you to be an asshole, and then something clicks in them when they find that, right? Like sometimes the rage sewer can get someone who is like ready to be lifted out of it, right? Who is actually like got that little bit of curiosity, that little bit of
Right.
spark. And like if we're all getting a little sad about how rage things work, then at least like I've seen other examples in other cases. There's a really lovely example where Lucasfilm employee archivist, Star Wars archivist Pablo Hidalgo shared a note from someone who said like, "Hey, I'm super sorry. I like basically harassed you after The Last Jedi came out. That wasn't fair of me. I realized how angry I was about the movie and how it wasn't fair." And I was like, "Oh my god, like that can only happen because that guy did have, the right seed inside him." And those people
That's
are out there, right? And it's better to make
Yeah.
things and catch them than not.
That's awesome. And I
Yeah.
just recently saw an interview with the CEO of Pinterest,
Yeah.
and he seems no, I mean, assuming we take him at his word,
Yeah.
he seems to be focusing his company on it's about the quality of the time you spend on our platform as opposed to the quantity of the time you spend on
Yeah.
our platform. So that sounds like language in the right direction as well. It's like
Yeah.
we can optimize for different things that whether it makes us as much money or not, I don't know. But
Yeah.
but we can say like there's we can move beyond there being a single metric of success.
Yeah. 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 Speaking of kind of speaking to what I said a second ago about, learning to leave the misinformation bubble. I feel as I moved from player to media professional to game industry professional, I have constantly found new, it is so easy to build up myths about how you think things work, and then so easy to have them knocked down. And over time, I've just sort of gotten more comfortable letting them be knocked down, even whatever emotions I've hooked on one of them. One such myth that I think gets out to a lot of people is the things you hate most about a game, a business model, something, come from the biggest person in it you can see. And publishers often sit at the top there and can be villainized for things. And here's the thing. I want to be crystal clear about this. A lot of the time, I don't know what percentage. I'm going to say more, at least 50%. That is absolutely where the thing you're mad about comes from. I am very confident about that based on the conversations I've had and such. And it's always been so frustrating to watch, these things happen when so many great people are down at the development level trying to make games you love. That said, I'm sincerely curious, having, sort of listened to your video about Anthem, about having spoken to other companies, how do you, what challenges are there, do you think, that studios sort of make for themselves that then get blamed on publishers, I guess? When do you...
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds. Sorry. That's the question I guess I'm aiming towards.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
It's so the easiest way to lead a group of people is to give them another group of people to be mad at.
Yeah. That's not relevant to politics whatsoever these days.
No. So if you're at a studio, it's a very convenient group of people to get that team to be mad at is the publisher.
Yeah.
It's ultimately not a great idea because you got to work with these people, but it is super easy and it's super effective.
Yeah.
So I would say that even within the team itself, there's a certain amount of this is the publisher's fault, even when it's not.
Yeah.
But there is every game is going to have at least one bug in it.
Yeah.
Every game is going to be missing one piece of content that would make it slightly better.
Even Silksong, guys. Even Silksong.
Yeah. And at some point, you gotta ship. You gotta start the process of shipping. And at that point, you're starting to make the decisions that, you're starting to decide that what things are going to be allowed to be missing or allowed to not be fixed or allowed to go. You're going to start the process of triaging, where you're going to go through your bugs, you're going to go through your missing content, and you're going to say, ugh, it makes me sad, but we're going to let this one go because either the systems of the game won't allow us to do this because it won't be performant, or it's going to cause this other plot to break. If we fix this bug, this other plot's going to break, or whatever.
Yeah.
The publisher might be setting that date, but the process of getting it there, that's the team. That is all the team. I don't think I've ever seen. Maybe I've heard some horror stories about Microsoft decades ago, but I don't think I've ever seen a place where the publisher is deciding what bugs, what features to cut.
Yeah,
that's happening inside those teams. So the pressures might be coming from external, but the actual decisions on the ground that's happening inside the team because it has to.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what people keep saying they want, right? They want the teams who know how to make games to make the games, and when that happens, even in the best of circumstances, it can turn a game from everyone was hoping was an S tier game into an A tier or something.
Yeah, and Silksong is, I'm going to argue, maybe the example, the counter example that proves the rule to some degree.
Yeah.
A team that runs that long with as few constraints as they seem to have had often gets lost in there.
Yeah.
They start so they didn't, to be clear.
Yeah.
But often what happens is you get bored of your own content.
Yeah.
So you throw away the content and you build it again, and you get bored of your own content. A game with no constraints looks a lot more like Duke Nukem Forever than it looks like Silksong at 9 times out of 10.
Oof.
Because you start eating your own, you eat your own tail. So constraints usually are good. as long as they're not ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
it's useful to have a target. It's useful to decide not to do things.
Yeah.
So the a lot of times that's the when it's working well, that's what the publisher is providing. Is they're
Yeah.
saying you have to ship a game, you have to be financially viable, you have to you have to eventually ship, and that's causing that narrowing and causing the game to actually come out. Where a lot of teams would probably not come out ever if they didn't have those constraints.
Yeah.
There's a high school in my city where in the I think it was in the 80s, they decided they were going to do the entire high school was going to go self-directed. So it's
Yeah.
like
Oh
we have
no.
the
Oh no.
classes. Come like you're going to come when do you want to come? Go to whatever you want to go to, and and then it's going to just open up the educational system. And I believe the stat is after they did that, they had this is a school of like 2,500, 3,000 people. They had 3 people graduate in the 3 years that after that.
That's
And
nuts. That's
so,
bananas.
but I think that's like Silk Song is one of those 3. Most other teams, and maybe it's not quite so bad as that, but many other teams, like if you took all the constraints off, would not ship.
Yeah.
Like it's not they would ship 2 years later with a better game. They would not ship ever.
Yeah.
So you can blame the publisher for saying like making a game ship a year earlier than it probably should have, and that's probably fair. But with no constraint, so if you remove the publisher from the equation completely, a lot of these teams never ship ever.
Yeah.
So you gotta maybe we've turned the dial too far to this is a quarter to quarter. I mean, I think that having video games controlled by publicly traded companies who care about quarterly results is awful. Quarters and video game releases, like these are not compatible things. It's ridiculous. So like, sure, I'd love to remove that constraint of like, we care what a quarter is,
Yeah.
but you got to ship it. You got to have someone saying it's got to ship in a lot of cases.
Yeah, especially in when some portion of your quarters is going towards promoting the dang game or making the press builds for the game, or it's not as bad now from what I've heard from folks, but like the E3 days, like, right, congratulations, you just lost like weeks of time getting that press build ready so that Steven Totillo doesn't trash you. If you're listening, Steven, I'm sure you're great, but I'm just naming you because you were around in that time.
But I mean, like, I hate demos, but you know what? Sometimes they're exactly what the team needs.
Yeah.
To just be like, oh, right, we're making a game. We're not just making a grab bag of features and exploration. Like, I mean, if Anthem doesn't make that thing in 2017 that is basically 100% smoke and mirrors, that game doesn't know what it is before that point. Well, I mean, it knows in 2014 when Casey's driving it, and then it doesn't know for 3 years. Then it makes that E3 demo, and it's like, oh, right, okay, I guess we do know what we are. So sometimes even a demo which is a huge pain, and it is incredibly disruptive, and often it often involves a lot of throwaway work that is done just for the demo. And often isn't even super duper accurate for the final game that comes out, especially if the demo is 2 years before the game releases. Even that can be useful under certain circumstances.
Yeah, I actually really love something you did when you were talking about that in your video. I love the shout out you gave to the EA marketing team because, one, marketing teams can be a little brutalized for different reasons or over celebrate for different reasons. But like, I thought you gave like a very specific shout out to them, which was, like, not only did, like, they give you guys a good E3, but they really got all in on Anthem in a way they were struggling to with other BioWare games. And it's really, like, whatever the underlying things there that don't sound awesome were, like, it's really great to hear when marketing just, like, clicks with what a game can be.
Yeah, I've gotten some people say, like, they feel like Anthem was mismarketed, and like in terms of it was promising things that weren't in the game, and I am quite confused by that because
Yeah.
I feel like of all of the games that BioWare has ever made, it is the game that was marketed the best
Yeah.
by a team that understood the game most accurately, and I think it was marketed the most accurately of all the games that BioWare has ever made. So maybe it's just that we're talking to a different audience, and it's an audience that's used to a more accurate feature by feature conversation. Because certainly, yeah, there's stuff in that E3 demo that isn't in the final game.
Yeah.
But it was best guess. I mean, always when you're doing a demo or a trailer, it's best. Well, assuming it isn't actual fraud, it's best guess at that moment. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no one, even the one that people like to talk about, the Aliens versus Predator. Like, I would be surprised if the difference between that demo and the final game was because of fraud, as opposed to we thought we could optimize it this much. Turns out we were wrong.
Yeah. Is that Aliens Colonial Marines you're thinking of?
Sorry, Aliens Colonial Marines. Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fun. I just was thinking, like, is there an AVP game that I'm forgetting that this happened for?
No, Aliens
yeah.
Colonial Marines. You're right, Colonial Marines.
Yeah, and even then, like, I think what's funny is people got that later on. Like, it shouldn't take modders to get a game, working that well. But like, I've seen some people go like, oh no, once you like sort of mod these things around, which just speaks to like the reason they weren't fixed before was something to do with, like you said, making that deadline. The game is closer to the vision of what came out of it. So it's always, especially on this podcast where we try to, like celebrate and explore the art of game development. Like, it can be difficult to acknowledge those moments, when something misses the mark. Like, I mean, even to some extent, Anthem, like not to join the parade of people who were dissatisfied with it, but like whether it's Anthem or Colonial Marines, like not only do these games have all the lessons that the non-anthems, the non-Colonial Marines can learn from, but two, like someone worked hard on that. Those people know all the errors that put a game in that position, and they're dragged through the mud for it.
Absolutely. Like, if you look at the PAX demo for Dragon Age Inquisition, so that is closer to ship than the E3 demo for Anthem was to Anthem ship.
Yeah.
It included features like you capture, the big one is you capture strongholds, and then you're going to have these strongholds that you control all over the world, which is not a feature in the final game. It is less accurate in a lot of ways to the final game than Anthem's 2017 E3 demo is to Anthem.
Yeah.
And there are people that are like, what happened to all this? But it's the difference is game of the year. I forgive you all the inaccuracies of your marketing material. 59% rated game. Why did you lie to me? It's like the same thing happened, and if anything, the 59% rated game lied to you less. But it's always forgiven in the game of the year.
This is kind of another thing I've thought about lately, which is one, this is obviously to some degree, like, there's the projection of the game that is being marketed to you and how it's being marketed. Then the reception end of it is you start to build the game in your head, and, like BioWare's storytelling chops and the, amazing quality of the games that have come out over the years to that point certainly created one version of that for people. And then there's the other thing, which is sort of like, unfortunately, everyone likes being lied to a little. I feel like people in power really like being lied to. And to some extent, consumerism is a kind of power, especially when our current channels for buying things and engaging with creators are a degree of like the customer is always right, like, or at least the belief of that. So unfortunately, we all like being lied to some extent. Well, that's unfortunate.
I mean, the marketers listening to this are gonna be mad at me, but I mean, to some degree, that's what marketing is, right? Is kind of taking a product that is something in most cases, if it's something that you need, you don't get a lot of marketing for milk.
Yeah.
Because it's like if you need it or you don't, you buy it or you don't. But marketing is taking something you don't need and turning it mentally into something that you do need.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the job.
Yeah. And I'm a sucker for it myself sometimes, not even for games, but like sometimes for I try to act like I'm better than the YouTube ads that I get when I'm trying to watch like a video essay, but sometimes I'm like, oh shit, I do need that coat.
Yeah. I mean, it works. It works on everyone. And in fact, I think there's research that says it works the best on the people who think it doesn't work on.
Oof. Well, I'm ruined. To bring us out of here on a to bring us out on a it's not that I think we've been on a negative note, but I'd really like to end on a nice and positive note. I have a habit of asking people on this podcast, it's funny enough, we talked up front about who gets to be in the spotlight, who's a public face, who's not, and the dynamics that creates. But who is someone that you've worked with? Could be a BioWare, not, or BioWare could be someone who's helped you with your channel. Who's someone who you think has been super awesome, has done something really cool, and you're have been great to work with them, that you'd like to give a shout out to, that man, no one knows how cool this person is.
I mean, I've talked about Benoit who is the senior project manager at BioWare.
Mm-hmm.
So he is awesome and honestly responsible for the fact that a lot of the games that people love at BioWare even shipped at all.
Yeah.
And I feel like project managers are seen as, the bad guy at a lot of studios, because it's they're the ones that manage the schedules, and they're the ones that decide how big the team is going to be, and they're the ones that do all the things that we wish as artists that we could just be creative and do whatever we want to do and not have any constraints. But like we talked about, constraints are what let things get done. So, to have someone, Benoit is incredibly caring, incredibly as a manager, but also as a person, just incredibly cares about the team, but also provides that rigor that teams need to ship anything. So yeah.
Well, shout out to Ben, and it's like I said, for anyone listening, always one, think about the project managers in your life, and two, I hope there's someone in your life, dear listeners, who has that same sort of man, no one's given this person enough credit quality, and I should be giving them more credit. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a lot of fun, and I hope our listeners had as much time listening to what you had to share as I did.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much to Mark for joining us. Be sure to visit his YouTube channel. There's some great videos that are almost like mini GDC talks. For more from us at Game Developer, be sure to visit www.gamedeveloper.com, follow us on major social platforms, and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find me on Blue Sky at brianfrancis.mme. Today's episode was edited by Pierre Lendreau. Our theme music is by Mike Meehan. As always, thank you for listening. And don't worry, I think GTA 6 is going to do just fine, right? Right?